He looked her right in the eyes and said, "Tell Natalie to pray more."
Welcome to episode 1 of Ugly Cry, where we answer questions that you're afraid to ask about grief, loss, and death. More lies, more conversation, girl, it really don't matter 'cause I'm not leaving you. So you're hanging with the... Today I'm talking with my longtime friend Natalie. Early last November, I climbed the steep staircase, tucked back into a grassy hillside, to meet Natalie on her porch. It was just as we were adjusting, or trying to adjust, to life in the midst of a pandemic, a few months after my father's passing. One of the first things she said was, "I've been thinking of your dad. It's amazing how those little moments stick with you in grief." After that talk, I decided to quit my job and found Upsprout, the first subscription box service designed to support grieving folks. A year later, it was a conversation with Natalie over a strong cup of coffee that gave me the final push to start this podcast. Natalie has a way of walking through the world with a sort of effortless, magical quality. I find it to be incredibly brave, whereas I constantly find myself unsure about the experiences and beliefs that I have around grief and loss. Natalie seems to be just the opposite. So I wanted to start this podcast here, capturing an honest conversation about our losses and how we've coped and tried to stay in touch with those whose presence we miss.
We were talking over coffee, and you mentioned that when you were younger, you used to hold your hand out and ask your great-grandma to hold your hand.
Yeah. She was really close to me. Yeah, I just completely missed her. I was like, can I do this? I didn't do it in front of my parents or anything.
And did she come hold your hand? Like, did it make you feel her presence?
I felt like I'd have to really think about it. I remember feeling like she could hear me and like she was kind of there had this canopy over my bed, like butterflies on it. Mm-hmm. And I felt like she was kind of between me on the bed and the canopy top. I did feel like she held me. Like I felt comforted. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I could ask her for those things. I don't know that I got any signs, mm-hmm. but like I didn't really know what I would be looking for.
Right.
Like a flash outside or an eagle out the window.
Yeah.
Pecking with his beak. But yeah, I think at that age you're thinking, this was someone that I could sit on their lap and they would talk to me and we had this great relationship. Like before I was verbal. Have you ever done that? Or did you have when you were little, like a relative that passed on? Or
I did. When I was younger, my stepmom died. She died when I was like 10 or 11. Mm-hmm. And of liver cancer. I don't remember ever trying to get in touch with her that way or ask for signs. I don't remember even understanding at all or like knowing at all what to do or even knowing how to get back in touch or knowing that was even something that I could do. Lay and say, "Oh, hey, I feel your presence here." It was just not something that was even on my mind. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why it really struck me that you sort of had a really different feeling, I guess, than I felt, maybe even still. So in your family, was that a normal
thing? Hearing you say, like, it never occurred to you, or no one ever told you, or, you didn't know it was an option. Mm-hmm. I realized I never told anyone or asked anyone anything about my grandma dying. I might have said, like, where did grandma go? And, my mom probably said she went to heaven.
Did you know what that meant?
Well, we went to church and they talked about it. I thought it was, like, in the sky or, like, outer space or, mm-hmm. like, you didn't have a body anymore. I knew that we buried her in the ground and that seemed like... And maybe my mom or dad said something about that she's not in her body anymore. Mm. But I think there was some fear,
Yeah.
Like what? But I feel like I must have felt her presence in some way. It must be one of my earliest memories. I'd be under the table looking through and seeing her like bustling back and forth with her little apron tie in the back. She'd be like making kolaches or something. And
Wow.
she was this amazing cook. But I think I just missed, I feel like, I'm sure you feel this with your dad, that there's this connection and like relationship that you have with him that you've never had with anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And you will never have that exact relationship. So there's this part of you that connects
Mm-hmm.
with him. Like he sees this Tess, his daughter, all the things that the travel and everything that you two talked about. It's like nobody else knows.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like I missed that.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like she understood and was sort of there in some way as like a little kid. I'm just kind of reflecting on it right now and thinking about it. It seemed just like, oh yeah, but if I think about it, I do remember missing her.
Mm-hmm.
And had this feeling like that she was I could call her close.
Yeah.
And that she could hold my hand.
Wow.
I thought I was imagining it though. I was like, am I imagining this or are you really? And I would ask, like, are you really holding my hand or am I imagining it? Of course, it was just like, no sound came out. Like, oh, I am holding your hand, Natalie. And I was like, oh, great. I thought I was going crazy.
Yeah. It's funny, those moments though, I've definitely had these moments that felt really symbolic. Like I'll say, I had this thought, these are my first memories that I'm having alone by myself, that my dad's not partaking in. And then the wind picked up and all my hairs blew into my mouth. I was like, stop saying that. And I was like, that's a sign. And then there's also another layer where it's the self-doubt. Was that really a sign, or am I just desperate for a sign that I'm looking? Am I creating the signs, or are they coming to me?
Do you feel, I feel like that's the Western society, that's America. A lot of us were, came over here, brought over here, and required in a way to disown the old country, the old beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've not done any research on it, but it feels like most older cultures revere that. And I feel like in order to participate in this country, we've been asked to second guess it. And I would venture to say that the self-doubt comes from that influence. The answer. Secondarily, something came in and said.
Yeah, the immediate reaction is, oh, of course, like, yes, yes, that's you. And the second impulse is, was it?
Yeah, is that me asking?
Mm-hmm.
Like me feeling comforted, and like that my great grandma was holding my hand.
Yeah.
I felt comforted. I felt that, but then I doubted it,
Yeah.
I just went on instinct, and I think, some people could argue that it's sentimentality, but it helped me. And I don't know, it feels really personal.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom's dad was my best friend. He died when he was 97 and I was, I think, 31. And did I tell you about the moment he died?
Mm-mm.
So I was working and I was 4 hours away from where he was and where my mom and the rest of my family was. My mom was with him and asked me to come down. She felt like, he was going to be checking out soon. And I went to Half Price Books and bought a bunch of books 3 books on death and dying. I didn't know anything about it. And one thing they talked about was that your hearing is the last sense to go. And I talked to him, even though it looked like it was over.
Mm-hmm.
And this little tear formed because I was like, you've done everything. And I'm like, you can let go. You've taken good care of us. We're going to be fine. Like, you're his mom had died when he was 4 from tuberculosis. I was like, you get to see your mom. You get to go see grandma who died 10 years before him. And I was just like, I love you so much. And I'm so happy we had this time. And this little tear, Tess, formed right in the corner of his eye. And I would venture to say, like, even that, a lot of people would have been like, he can't hear you. But scientists and however they know that you can, I don't know how they know that. And then I went home, like right after that I left. So I had to go back to work, and I was at work that next day, and I was trying to work like on my computer, tap, 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 and all of a sudden my screen just went black. Like the whole computer was like, and I was like, oh, I'll just turn it off and turn it back on. Like, no. It was like on the fritz. Nobody else in my office's computer did that. So I was like, well, darn it. I had work. I wanted to, and I was like, I'm going to go get a juice. I'm just going to walk away. And I was remembering my grandpa was at the end of his life. And I went and got a juice and like sat on this patio. And there were these live oak trees casting shadows. And it just hit me. Like, I just felt like, I guess they say like the dead come and like hang around you before they move on or something. But I felt like he was there and like I died. I felt like he was trying to tell me like, I need you to be present. I'm moving on. We may not be able to summon a blue jay or an eagle to tap with its beak on your window as a sign. And at the same time, I think the signs might be so subtle that we might dismiss them. I guess it's I don't know if I wanted to say like a form of therapy, or it just feels like it helps me. And yeah, sometimes I think I'm just making it up and it's crazy, but I there are parts of the world that's just every day. It's normal. That's life. That's the beauty of life and death.
I also want to talk to you about dreams.
Ooh, okay.
Have you been visited by people in dreams?
The people that have passed on? Ooh, that's a juicy one. I'd have to think of that. The thing that did come to mind when you said that was after my grandpa died, passed on, my mom had this dream. It was, I don't know, a month or maybe 2 weeks after he passed. And she said, last night when I was dreaming, I had this dream that Grandpa and I were just sitting at the kitchen table like he was alive, and we were just talking, and maybe we'd eaten dinner, I don't remember, but we were just talking about the day and just like we always did. And she said, and at the end, and she called him Daddy, which I always thought was kind of funny, but also really sweet. She said that he told her, he looked her right in the eyes and said, tell Natalie to pray more. Yeah, I think of that a lot. Like when I'm having a really hard time with something, or something, really distressing has occurred, I'll pray. And sometimes I just talk to him. I find that helpful too. Just kind of talking. You feel a little, I don't know, telling someone else, you might feel a little sheepish about it. But I do still feel those connections with people that are no longer alive. Like I feel like with my great grandma, it's kind of a little more distance, but there's still that sweetness. It feels to me clear like your connection with your father is very present, and that makes so much sense to me. And I do feel like you can cultivate those relationships different, and it feels very worthwhile to cultivate those like you would a friendship in the physical world.
Yeah.
Maybe even more so.
Yeah. They do say that, right? That like your relationship doesn't end because someone has died or passed on. It just changes its shape.
I like that. I like
that's
that. I
true.
haven't heard that. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Have you had any? So it's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. But have you had any dreams of?
Oh yeah,
a lot.
Oh, yes, yes, really intense dreams.
Specifically about your father, or
Yeah,
really?
That's really the only person that I. Maybe it's because I'm just like, oh, you know, if someone's gonna come to me, you know, if the veil is thin and someone can come through it. I don't really want it to be anybody else but my dad, you know.
Yeah.
Like that's just send him over. That's it. You know, I'll take any moment. But yeah, definitely. There's one where I woke up and I was crying when I woke up because it was like he was in front of me. And there was another one where we were both sort of going through the motions of the script of the dream. So we had this moment where we both almost like woke up from the dream, and I told him, I looked at him, I said, wow, I can't believe you're standing right in front of me. And we just hugged for a super long time. And he like, his
so glad you
tone changed in the dream. So I was like, oh, I think that's really you in front of me. It was so strange. Yeah. I didn't intend to be crying my way through so much of this. Didn't imagine that, but
that's healthy.
It's okay.
That's healthy.
As I finish sharing this story about my dreams, about my father, the conversation drifts and we start talking about the last words that I said to my father, the time that we had a ceremony for him, us spreading his ashes. I cry my way through most of the conversation. So much of this is still very vulnerable and raw. I debated a long time whether to leave the clip in of me crying or not, but I decided to leave it because Natalie's right. It is healthy. I want to share one final piece of our conversation because I feel like this story that Natalie shares about her grandfather says so much about the way that we experience the loss of people who mean so much to us.
My grandpa was alive when my grandma died, so I talked to him about her, and that was how I kept those memories alive.
I bet that was great for him. Did you feel like that? Like it was like he enjoyed you asking about her and talking?
He definitely missed her. And towards the last year or two of his life, he would doze off in the middle of the day, like in his chair. And if I was in town and I'd come over, even though he knew I was coming over, he'd be like dozed, and I'd just knock on the screen door and he'd wake up and he'd still be kind of in that dream state. And he would be, actually, to answer your question about dreams, he was dreaming about her. And he had the same dream like 2 times, maybe 3, where he was in some church or some building with like a high roof, and that my grandma was like climbing up in the rafters, and he was so concerned about her. Like, what are you doing? Like, come down. Like, why are you up there? And she wasn't listening to him or acting like it was any big deal to be way up there. And so when I'd wake him up by coming over, he'd still be trying to like, but you know, your grandma's up there. I don't understand why. And he'd be talking about it as if there were the raptors in the room we were in and she was up there, but he knew it wasn't happening, but he hadn't. And my mom thought he was losing his mind. And after talking to him, I realized he'd been dreaming. And I was like, Grandpa, you know, that was a dream. I was like, Grandma died 10 years ago.
Wow.
Like, you must have been dreaming about her. How sweet.
Yeah.
And that really brought him into the moment. And it seemed like really meaningful and important to him that I helped like him understand and connect with it. And maybe that was him like leaving this life, kind of like some way, letting go a little bit. By having those dreams and kind of staying in that mental state, or it could just be, you know, grogginess. But that did really, it was like he snapped right out of it. that was a dream that she was up. Okay, well, look, like it was making sense and it was comforting.
Wow.
And also that he'd been dreaming about her.
Yeah.
That he could still see her.
Yeah. That's something really special.
To see them?
Yeah, I think so. I think it has this kind of alluring effect almost too, where it gets to be like at times when grief is really heavy, where it's almost like feels desperate of like, oh, I don't really want to wake up, or I just want to sleep because I hope that's when I can find you. So there are like moments of being like, oh, I don't actually want to come out of my dream because you're there. It makes me think of that when you're saying that he was sort of in this middle space where he still wanted to kind of hang on to her and not really come into the world where she wasn't there. And then, of course, it's comforting when someone says, oh, I'm sure seeing you, too, that's also comforting because there are people in this space as well, the non-dream space to come back to, of course, so.
That, like, strikes me right on the heart.
I think you really have this beautiful way of saying things that are facts as facts instead of
dismissing it.
Yeah, or making them, being self-deprecating about it or making it a joke and just saying, no, I of course, I laid in my bed and I asked my great-grandma to come hold my hand and I felt like she was there. And I do think that that's something really special and that probably more people do than admit. I think it's very normal because of course we're looking for signs. Of course we miss those people's presence. And of course we're all looking for ways to connect to them. Yeah, and it does feel like it has to be a private act so often.
In our next episode, I'm talking to one half of a father-daughter team of morticians about what it's like and how it affects her own thoughts and experiences around grief and loss. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss it. This is Tess, and you've been listening to Ugly Cry.